Shehzade Mehmed was not just the son of the great Sultan Suleiman, but his most beloved heir, whose untimely death became one of the greatest tragedies of the Ottoman Empire. Suleiman, who had never known defeat on the battlefield, could not come to terms with the loss of Mehmed and even ordered a throne to be erected over his tomb. But what is known about Mehmed from historical sources? I found some interesting facts for you. Shehzade Mehmed was born in Istanbul, Constantinople, presumably in September 1521. His mother was the concubine of the Sultan named Heir, a woman gifted to Sultan Suleiman by the Crimean Khan. This gift was timed to Suleiman's accession to the throne. Mehmed became the first Shehzade born in the capital in the last 50 years, and so the people's joy was immense. Suleiman proved himself not only as a good warrior but also as a sultan capable of producing offspring, which was very important at that time when diseases claimed the lives of most children, even those of sultans. The joy of Mehmed's birth was further amplified by the fact that his father, Sultan Suleiman, was at that moment achieving brilliant victories on the battlefield, the campaign to Rhodes. Since Suleiman was not in the capital at the time of Mehmed's birth, his name was probably given to him by his grandmother Hafsa Valide Sultan. Right after his birth, Mehmed was not the first in line for the throne. He had 3 older brothers, all born to different concubines of his father. But already in October, 2 of his brothers Mahmud and Murad passed away. They were taken by the plague or, according to other sources, smallpox. Now he became the second in line. Suleiman's eldest son was Mustafa, 6 years older than Mehmed. Mehmed, like all young Shehzades and sultanas, as well as their mothers, lived in the old palace. What we were shown in the magnificent century Topkapi Palace with the harem took on a similar appearance much later. At that time, the Sultan and his family lived separately, though Suleiman often visited the old palace when he wasn't away. There, Mehmed, along with Mustafa, received the best education, and in 1530, they shared the most important event of their childhood. They underwent the circumcision ceremony. A grand celebration was held in the city in their honor. From a very early age, Mehmed became interested in politics and tried to be a support to his father. In 1532, when the Sultan was on a military campaign, 11-year-old Mehmed wrote to him informing him about the situation in the capital. He reported about 12 fires that had occurred in the military victory of Admiral Hayreddin Barbarossa. Mehmed also, it is unclear whether on his own initiative or at his mother's request, asked his father to appoint Pilak Mustafa Pasha to a higher position. The Sultan agreed, and Heir found a wife for Mustafa Pasha from the Sultan's harem. In 1534, Valide Hafsa Sultan passed away. The Sultan officially married the mother of Shehzade Mehmed and set out on a long military campaign against the Safavids. And 13-year-old Mehmed was left by Suleiman as his deputy in the capital. During this period, Heir and all her children moved to Topkapi. Shehzade successfully fulfilled his task, and in 1537, at the age of 16, he gained military experience by joining his father on the campaign to Corfu. In 1541, 20-year-old Mehmed and his younger brothers Selim and Bayezid participated in the campaign to Buda. Only after this, on the 12th of November 1541, did Mehmed arrive in Manisa to perform the duties of a Sanjak Bey. According to Ottoman traditions, Mehmed's mother was supposed to go to the Sanjak with him. But Heir stayed in the palace in the capital. This was due to the presence of her other children, including the ailing Shehzade. Plus, her official status as the Sultan's wife obliged her. Mehmed's nanny, who in some ways replaced his mother, went with him to the Sanjak. There were also girls for his harem and eunuchs personally chosen by Heir. Many believe that Shehzade Mustafa, who had ruled Manisa for several years before Mehmed, was exiled from there so that Mehmed could take over the best Sanjak. However, historians insist this is not the case. In the year of Shehzade Mehmed's death 1543, Heir visited her son in the Sanjak. Her visit may have been prompted by the birth of Mehmed's only daughter, Humasa. After this visit, Heir traveled to Suleiman, who was nearby, in Adrianople. But just as she arrived, messengers brought terrible news to the camp: Shehzade Mehmed had died. Heir wanted to immediately return to Manisa, but she was not allowed, as Mehmed had died of an infectious disease. The archives of Manisa record this event as follows. On the day when the Aga brought the news of the conquest of Esztergom and Belgrade, a grand ceremony and fireworks were held in Manisa, and at the same time, Shehzade Mehmed fell ill. Shehzade lay bedridden for 6 days, and on the 7th night, he passed away. After a short period of mourning, his tutor and treasurer Ibrahim Celebi immediately set out for Istanbul with the body of the Shehzade. The Shehzade had spent 1 year and 2 days in Manisa before his death. The exact cause of death may be indicated by an earlier report. In the spring of this year, the plague reappeared in the city and buried many families underground. Thus, it cannot be ruled out that Mehmed died of the plague, but another infectious disease is also possible, as there is no direct evidence. In any case, on the 7th of November 1543, Mehmed died. Usually, Shehzades who were executed or died of natural causes were buried in Bursa. Mehmed became the first exception to this rule. It was planned that he would be buried in the complex of his grandfather Selim I's mosque, like the previously deceased children of Suleiman, or in the Bayezid-i mosque complex. However, Suleiman and Hurrem had other plans. Since the body had to be buried as soon as possible, the burial eventually took place in Bayezid Square, and the body of the Shehzade was placed in a temporary tomb. During the funeral, Suleiman wept continuously for more than 2 hours. And instead of the usual 3 days, he ordered prayers for his son's soul for 40 days, and the pashas had to wear mourning clothes for 40 days instead of the usual 3. Suleiman himself also wore only black for a long time. This clearly shows the father's pain as well. Meanwhile, Hurrem tried to ease her grief by taking Mehmed's little daughter and her mother under her care. But for several weeks, she also closely watched Mehmed's other concubines to see if any of them were carrying a child by Mehmed. Unfortunately, none of the concubines was pregnant. In any case, Mehmed's little daughter, Humasa, comforted the grieving Sultan and his wife and became one of their most beloved granddaughters. However, all of this was not enough for Hurrem and Suleiman, so they decided to build a mosque in his name. Upon hearing this news, everyone was surprised. After all, this mosque was planned to be built in the most prominent place in Istanbul where Suleiman had planned to build his own complex. This was not only a generous and unprecedented act but also quite a bold one. Suleiman was already aging and was not sure he would be able to build another complex for himself, so he risked never having his own mosque in the capital. But fate gave Suleiman enough time to build his own vast complex almost next to Mehmed's mosque. The construction of Shehzade Mehmed's mosque complex took about 5 years, during which time Suleiman and Hurrem visited the construction site many times, supervising the work being carried out there. So it is possible that Mehmed was truly Suleiman's most beloved son, and it was he whom Suleiman considered worthy of the throne. Therefore, the death of Shehzade Mehmed became a tragedy not only for his family but also for the entire Ottoman Empire.